So this isn't really a secret surprise or anything for me. Well, the briefcases, but Xiaomi sent me a phone in a freaking briefcase. Like, yo. So it's all set for the right password and stuff. If it's 3, why? I just reset it, the password for some reason. There we go. And there we go. And this is like a nice briefcase, actually. If I get the Blackstone stuff, I can store my stuff in here. So, ow. So we have foam. More foam. More foam. And a phone. This is the X3 GT. This is a MediaTek 1100 device. It has 8 gigs RAM and 256 gigs of storage. It comes with a USB Type-C cable, protective case, USB Type-C to 3.5, adapter, SIM eject tool, quick start, warranty, and all that other stuff. So if we pop this open, what we will see inside of this, which I'm actually really excited for right here, is yoink, yoink. This is actually like one of the cooler unboxings I've gotten out of these devices. It has Google Apps, MIUI, all the good stuff. So you get this here, you open it up, and you get this piece. It comes with your SIM eject tool. You get some stickers, cards and warranty, USB-C headphone, and a case. So let's just put this back in here for right now. I'll take the case out when I'm ready to use it. And let's get on to this device. So if I tip this over, we have here a Poco X3 GT, which is a flagship MediaTek Dimensity 1100 6nm 5G processor, 67 watt turbocharging, 120 Hz 6.6 inch display, Dolby Atmos dual speakers, 64 megapixel camera. I'm actually interested in it, and it's like the F3 and all those where it's just rounded over here, nothing different. Pre-installed screen protector and stuff. Here we go. And if we pop this piece open right here, we actually get ourselves a dual SIM card slot. No SD card, sadly, but it does have 256 gigs of space, which is very nice. And then inside the box too, we get ourselves 67 watt charger. And then a USB-C cable, which I'll actually check out if that's the same. But let me just put this back. I'll turn on the device. I'm gonna get this device set up, and I'll be back once everything is ready. So now that we got the unboxing out of the way for this Poco X3 GT, I wanna talk about the specs. It has a plastic back. So if I were to pick this up to the camera more, you can see this sort of cool little thing here, I guess you say. As you can see, according to the light, it changes colors from like darker to brighter. And it's harder to see sometimes. Cool color, but it does dark to light, and if I go like this, you can see it's lighter. And you can see that little pattern on here. So this pattern right here just adds to the plastic, and there's plastic everywhere around it. It has 8 gigabytes of DDR4 LPX RAM. And then also along with this is 128 or 256 gigs of storage at UFS 3.1 speeds with no SD card slot. Now both of those 128 or 256 have 8 gigabytes of RAM. There's no 6 gigabytes options here, which is a good thing that they're actually forcing us to have 8 gigs of RAM. It weighs 193 grams, heavy for some. I find this to be a decently weighted phone. Not too light, not too dark, or not too heavy. It has a 6.6 inch 120 Hz 1080p screen at 240 Hz touch sample rate. So if I unlock this and I go around at if I go here and I go to display, actually, it'll show that I am running this at 120 Hz. Now it has what they could say Corning Gorilla Glass Victus. I don't know how I can test those out because I'm not dropping my phone. The CPU is a MediaTek Dimensity 1100. Thoughts on the CPUs are much better this year than they were every other year I've ever used a MediaTek CPU. It has a 5000 mAh battery at 67 watt charging. Now, if you're going to do 67 watt charging, you're going to want to take the charger that came in the box along with their 67 watt wire. Now, it is a different wire for this phone for 67 watts, so you're going to want to keep that in mind. And it has 5G with all the bands needed. So you have 77, 78, and all the other ones. And I got proper speeds when running 5G here with this phone. So this phone gave me my proper 5G speeds. Bluetooth 5.0, 5.2, and Wi-Fi 6 are also present on this device, causing it to run extremely fast and smooth here. And Dolby Audio with dual speakers is present. Thoughts on that later on in this video. So I want to talk first about the speed of the phone, being it's coming with a MediaTek CPU and whatever GPU they decided to throw in this year. Now, my problem with MediaTek CPUs as a whole is it's MediaTek. Every other year I've used a phone. It used to be only like G series, and there was another series, the Helios. No, that's the G series. There's another series that they used to have. I had a phone with a Helios G something, that new mobile G3. It ran okay, but it ran a little hotter and it slowed down, and when I try to turn it on now, I can really feel the speed. Like, not because, oh, it's an old phone. I've turned on phones from 3 years ago and they didn't do this bad. And then I also went and I dealt with a phone, the blue N1, I think it was, that had another G series CPU inside of it. That one was so bad that I didn't care. Like, if I had a fingerprint sensor in the screen, I'm happy. Pop-up camera, whatever. It was a great phone with all that in there. The only problem is the phone itself caused issues where it would have slowdowns, and about 2 to 3 days into to owning it, I'd contacted Blue. I said, I need to return this. This is it. I can't use this phone. And I just swapped back to one of the other phones I had at the time. I couldn't even deal with it. That's how bad it was. Now, during my 3 weeks though, this phone actually ran quite smooth. Combined with the UFS 3.1 speed, I thought it felt snappy. There really was no slowdowns in this phone. The only slowdowns I felt were ones that were caused by MIUI. If I only had one issue of overheating, these MediaTek CPUs, these are prone to overheating. Like I've had in the past overheating issues with this phone. You see the OnePlus Nord 2 has had explosion issues. My only overheating issue with this phone was I was standing outside a couple days ago as the filming of this video. I was waiting for a bus. Blazing heat, sun and everything, and boom, overheating issue. Showed 43 degrees on the sensor. Not the end of the world, but that's the only time I got it to be really hot. Otherwise, it's been 41 and below, and it's been perfect. I played some games. I have Asphalt 9 on here, and then I have Call of Duty, and then I have some random other games, like some crappy clicker. I don't play a lot of these clicker games, but I have Call of Duty, Asphalt, BeatStar. There was another one I had on here that I installed recently. And Call of Duty, I'm getting a constant 60 FPS. For some reason, doesn't support 90 on there, or 120 right now. But I get a constant 60 FPS, no issues. And I get this when I'm anywhere, I get up to 41 degrees in Celsius, which is what these are ratings in, and it works perfect. No heat, no overheating issue, no nothing like that. It's just actually really good. The display on the phone looks great. Now, colors are vibrant and content consumption is great, but compared to AMOLED screens, you can't. Compared to an AMOLED screen, this screen is a little bit duller. Otherwise, like I tested this, if I do 4K HDR, it actually looks really good. It looks very good, and it's very fluid with the 120 Hz screen. So let me just make sure this is in. It's a problem with this. It doesn't just go right to that HDR setting. Now let's take this and compare it to my F3, which has 4K an AMOLED screen. Now you can see I'm going to put it to 2160p. Side by side, I can't actually tell too much of a difference until I go out of the app and I basically slide to go home, and then you can somewhat tell a difference between the two screens. But otherwise, this screen is amazing. Now, I was thinking to myself, if I was given this phone, like, this phone is great. If I was given this phone, other than it being plastic, and I wasn't told any of the specs, I wouldn't know what, and I wasn't like a huge nerd, and I knew Snapdragon, MediaTek, and that stuff. But I was told you have to use this phone, but you cannot look at where the at like device info apps and other things like that. So I can't just go in here, download a device info app, and get my information about the screen on chip and stuff. I can't do that. If they tell me you have to use the phone the way it is, you can't download any of these device info apps that tell you everything about the phone. You have to just you just have to use the phone normally. Surprisingly, I would have thought this thing had a Snapdragon 860 inside of it, compared to when I have the Poco X3 Pro, Snapdragon 860. The only difference between this and that is more or less it's more or less that this thing has 5G with the Dimensity 1100. That Poco X3 Pro has 4G LTE. This thing has 67 watt. The X3 Pro has 33 watts, and then this one has a little bit of a slimmer design, and the X3 Pro is a bit thicker. Otherwise, they're more or less the same in terms of all the rest of the specs. In that regard, the only difference between this and my X3 Pro is the fact that this has a MediaTek. Otherwise, I would not even be able to tell the difference between the two. Constant frame rates, everything about this is good. Screen is really vibrant. Let's move on to gaming performance. So I have on here a couple of games. I have Asphalt 9, BeatStar, fun game actually, Call of Duty Mobile, and a clicker game somewhere over here called Trash Tycoon. Now, I play Call of Duty often, and on MIUI, if you go into your settings itself, you can enable actually inside of developer options. For some reason, I always find this hard to find, but all this does is if you go down, basically you can have it show refresh rate, not system tracing here. There is a spot, again, as you can see, I don't always remember, but you click it and it'll pop up with a spot showing power tool monitor. You can see it shows refresh rate, so if I make this closer, you can see refresh rate and other things like that. So it says I have 120 hertz, all the good stuff here. So you got everything. So 120 hertz, all that stuff, because now it went down to 50 hertz to save battery. Now this screen goes 120, 90, 60, and 30. So when it displays these, it actually shows correctly. So I turned that on, and then I went into my Call of Duty Mobile. No crashing, no nothing. It stayed at around 39 to 40 C, and it had a constant FPS of 60. Asphalt 9 showed 90 hertz because that's, for some reason, how much I can get it up to in all the settings. That was also constant. There was no issue there. That was constant. Now, BeatStar and this Trash Tycoon, I didn't actually check per se those apps, but I did not notice any slowdown of any kind, and they seem very, very smooth, fluid and smooth. And then you have your camera. It's whatever, like the processing power of this camera is whatever here. So if I go in and I snap a picture of, let's say, this first class, and I do this and I zoom in, like zooming in, you can see some detail, but if I go here into my F3 and I take a picture with better processing power, and I zoom in here, you can see if I go into where the A is, you can actually see, let me turn on Do Not Disturb, I don't know why to turn that off, there we go. You can see some sort of quality difference. Now, this one has a little bit of a more truer tone down here than this one for it, but this one actually looking at this now, this one has a truer tone than this F3 camera. If I zoom out a bit, this one is a bit whiter than this one, which is more truer to the color of this room right now. So you can notice that. And then video 2, I'll show some samples here of stuff that I have taken with this phone, and you'll see. Now sound. I mentioned earlier that the X3 GT has Dolby Audio. Dual speakers top and bottom. It's great. I like it actually. Now I mentioned though that to get the dual audio, you had to actually use different preset to make it not have the bass. I said that preset was the one for classicals. Change my graphic equalizer to custom, and then I'll move back.
Tell me what you like. Go!
Okay, now let's go back into my settings. I'll change it to classical, and then I'll go back. Let's start it over and we'll listen to it here.
Tell me what you like. Go!
Now, for sure, it is definitely clear. I'm actually going to go looking at this to their most popular songs, I guess. And we'll do this. Can't I have to remember the one that I had? There we go. Okay, so this is now with the classical preset on.
Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me? All of the noise turned into choirs of harmony. Left me with the pieces of forever that you broke. But since you left me alone, I've been high.
Now I'll turn it to the custom preset.
Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me? All of the noise turned into choirs of harmony. Left me with the pieces of forever that you broke. But since you left me alone, I've been high.
Okay. From at least what I can tell here, it has more of a bass. Like, the thing with this classical preset is it caused it to have more bass. It had extra bass to it and stuff, and then when I went into classical, it changed it over to having extra mids. Now, the bass wasn't, I'm not saying like the bass was bad, horrible, this and that per se, but the mids are just more pronounced, and I think with mids being more pronounced on this phone, it actually is a bit better. I really thought that. And I think if you're going to be using this phone, even when I got a phone call, I got a phone call, it sounded way too bassy. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to hear that correctly. And I only have my ringtone on. I can hear the vibrations pretty well. I only have my ringtone on for calls and my main text messages. Like, right now I have it on do not disturb and vibrate and stuff, but usually I have it on just for the calls and my texting, and then everything else is on vibrate and I can still feel it, and I know when I get stuff in. But I had to turn it to classical before I was able to enjoy it. And battery life is another thing. If we go here into our settings and we head over to battery performance, you can see I did all this. You can see, boom. My screen for some reason now is only 5 hours and 59 minutes at 19% left. You can see exactly what I was using here. But for some reason, this phone lasts me up to 7 hours, and now it says 36% charged one time. You can see my graph shows it hasn't been charged since last night. And it's been a very good phone. It's been lasting me all day, and the charge takes 35-40 minutes for a full charge, if not even a little less. Like, it's that fast that even if it dies me halfway through the day, I plug it in, come back 20 minutes later, and I have enough charge for the rest of the day. That's how good it is. It's a great battery. It's 5,000 mAh. People will say, oh, battery backup this, battery backup that, but battery life in my end has been excellent. I've got 7 to 8 hours of battery life almost every day so far, except today because I used it a lot in a specific time zone. If I click the time frame here, from about 10 o'clock on, I was using it to play a specific game. So that's why it lacked on me. 5G speeds on this phone, I don't have 5G at the current moment, just because I'm not in a 5G little area around me. But normally, my speeds range from about 250 megabits per second to 450 megabits, almost 500 megabits per second. And according to this, on even high-end phones like the Fold, Notes, iPhones, and other phones like that, that's accurate speeds. This actually gives me accurate and fast speeds on my modem. Now, the things that I don't like about this phone, there's a couple things. The proximity sensor is ultrasonic. So I downloaded an app here, and I want you to understand what it means by ultrasonic sensor here. So if I go into my proximity sensor, now when I test it, you can see here, it's not, I can't just cover it to get it to work. It doesn't just work like that on this phone. I actually have to lift it up to my ear, and then it'll actually focus. Like, for some reason, it can't just be covered. It's not an actual proximity sensor. What it is, and I've researched this company, it's an Ecliptic Labs proximity. Its ID is 8, this is all the information. Same sensor used on all the cell phones from Xiaomi in the past year, I believe it is. Starting from the Note 10 and X3 Pro, F3, X3 GT, F3 GT, Mi, all these other phones. Mi 11X and all these phones. And this proximity sensor, Xiaomi actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, cut their ties with it. Just go back to a regular proximity sensor. One that if I cover the screen, like if I go like this and I turn on the proximity, if I cover my finger over where the proximity sensor should be, this screen right here shouldn't show 5 centimeters away. It should show covered. It should just work, and it should be there. Now again, this phone has the same proximity sensor. So if I go in here into sensors, proximity, you see it shows Xiaomi proximity, type ID 8, and all this stuff. It's because I'm running a custom ROM on this phone, so that's why it shows that. But if I go into proximity, you can see it does the same exact thing here. Same exact issue. I'm covering the top of the phone, and I'm going to do the same thing on here. It only works if I lift it up to the screen, and it barely works at that on this F3 the right way. This one at least works a bit better, but still, it bothers me that this is an ultrasonic one, not just a real sensor inside this phone, and that really hurts this phone for me. Now, when I was listening to we were listening to the music before at basically full brightness, full volume, the back was vibrating a lot. Like, this has bad vibration from the music. You can feel it. So if I pick up this phone and I start listening to music on here, I can feel vibrations coming from this plastic back. Now, my F3 also has that issue of the vibration glass back, but it's nowhere near as bad as this. If I turn this one up to full, and then I turn this one up to full, I don't feel that as bad in this. Although I do feel it. I don't know why they haven't tuned it separately, but I feel it really badly on this phone. And you saw those camera shots. Meh. The processing of the camera stock is just whatever, and to make it working, you have to get a good working Gcam for this phone. You have to do a modified Google camera. It just doesn't work stock. Stock camera is good, but there's improvements that have to be made to this camera to make it look nicer, in my opinion. This is definitely not my main camera I would want to use on my phone if I were to have to choose this as my phone. All in all, though, I have, other than those 3 different complaints, I like this phone. MediaTek and all. It's just surprising, actually. MediaTek, one of those things that I never thought I'd say here on my channel, MediaTek good. Surprised. It's even better than, in my opinion, the Exynos processors, which from Samsung, they walked out of Exynos for their cell phones. So they went to Snapdragon. Like, actually, surprisingly, if no one told me that this was a Snapdragon MediaTek phone, and I was just told, here, use this phone, but you cannot know any specs, I would have thought this was a Snapdragon processor. It was actually that decent. And then everything else about this is great. I like the screen. I think it's vibrant enough. I think it looks nice. Everything about it. It's just a great all-around phone. And I think if you're looking for a phone for about $350 and 256 gigs of storage, 8 gigs of RAM, pick up this phone. Or if you really want something that you can get custom ROMs on and a bit better camera, $350 about, you get yourself 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of space with an AMOLED screen, glass back, Dolby Audio, no headphone jack, same thing as this, except this is an IPS screen. This AMOLED screen has 33-watt fast charging, then go for this one. And 400 for the 256 for Snapdragon. Otherwise, I really do think that this phone right here, this X3 GT, is a great contender. MediaTek has done well, and I'm hoping to see what they do next year with their Dimensity processors, and hoping that they fix a little bit more overheating issues from the phone getting a bit hotter in different scenarios. That even my Snapdragon phone didn't do 870, and my Snapdragon didn't do the same poorness. Otherwise, this phone's great. If you did like this video, please rate, comment, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.